Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the University of Michigan Retirees Association podcast. Our podcast offers a fresh way to stay connected with our Retirees Association and the greater University of Michigan community through our many programs delivered by prominent faculty and inspirational community leaders, and by our vibrant interest groups. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope you enjoy the following episode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to UMRA Reads discussion of A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. Let's get started. I think that I hope that folks agree that this is a book that was pretty simple in its structure, but very complex in its content.
Yes.
Who would like to start us off?
I will.
Thanks.
I liked it very much. And somehow, because I'm so familiar with the title and all, I must have thought I read it. But as I was reading it, I realized I had never read it. I had seen the movie years ago, but apparently, and I tried to get it from the library, but I've been on hold for weeks and weeks now. I don't know. It's a very old movie, so there might only be a few copies floating around in the system. And apparently the movie only covers part of the book. But to get back to, I guess I have three things I kind of wanted to mention. It's just such a special book. The characters are so, Francie, well, who could not like her and just empathize and sympathize with all the stuff she's going through. And this vision, this depiction of poverty and how they make it. I love that the meaning of the title, really, that, this tree growing in Brooklyn against all odds in the cement and all. And here this kid, everything is putting her and her family kind of down. They're so poor, and yet they're thriving, and, they're a good little family. So just, let's see, three things. I had mentioned it. I'd seen a friend of mine I hadn't seen for a long time, and we're both in several book clubs. And she said, "What are you reading?" And I said, "A Tree Grows in Brooklyn." She said, "Oh," she said, "I have such a special place in my heart for that." She says, "I was sort of decluttering and getting rid of books and donating them to the library. But she says, I looked at my copy of A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, and I had to keep it just, forever." So I think there's there can be just a sentimental love of how it's told. So that's number one. Number two, I realized I'm getting old, as we all are. But when I went to the library, to the Dexter Library, to ask them to put the DVD on hold, and I said it to her, and I guess I must have said quickly, and she said, "What?" And I said, "A tree grows in Brooklyn." She was a young librarian, and she said, "Okay." And then she says, "A tree grows in Brooklyn. Can you spell it for me?" I said, "You haven't heard of it?" She says, "No." Oh, she looked like she was about 30 to me, but I would have thought and hoped she would have heard of it. But, it's like a lot of kids not hearing of the Beatles, sometimes. So that I just had to laugh at myself and just at the passage of time. And then thirdly, and I might have mentioned this a little bit as we were talking about looking forward to reading it. One of my favorite little parts was my aunt, who was my godmother, was in our family, one of the poorer families in our, extended family. And she loved that book. And every Christmas she would read a little part about Christmas where the two kids go out, and to get a free tree, the tree is thrown, and how the guy who's doing it says to himself, "Why don't I just give them this tree? Why am I throwing it at these kids? I could just give it. But then if I do, I'll have to give it to everybody, and money is money, and this whole thought process." And so then he heaves it and throws it at them. And she was just so impressed and thought that it had such insight into just what it's like to be poor and all. So every Christmas at Christmas dinner, she would read that part. So when it came, it was like, oh my gosh, a little homecoming for me to see that part in the book. And okay, I'm done. That's all my basic reflections I wanted to say. Hmm.
Well, I'll go next. I just loved it. I loved it. I never had read it, and I from the first page to the last, I was just enchanted. I thought that the characters were fantastic. Francie, her mother, her hardworking mother, her father with this, giant heart and but all these issues. Her aunt Sissy, who, was such a strong presence for her, but had so much sadness. And just these situations she would encounter, like that really cruel teacher, and how you could just picture her walking a few blocks over to that other school and telling them, oh, she lived in that house across the street or whatever. She kind of told a story to them to get into that school. And I, and then how that teacher spoke to her when she was trying to write the truth. There were so many, stories and sub stories. And a funny thing is that, I read it on Kindle and I felt like it ended abruptly just because I don't have the physical book. So I don't know, like I'm at the end. And so oh no, it's done. And so now I'm calling it my favorite book ever. That's what I have to say for the opener.
There you go.
Great. I'm sorry I haven't finished it, and I don't remember what the ending was because I read it before and I recommended that book. That book was written when I have recommended it a number of times when books went to war, that book, and it has not been selected by this book club. And one of the books that was written about in that book was When a Tree Grows in Brooklyn. And apparently it was one of the soldiers' favorite books. And many of them wrote to Betty Smith, and she wrote back to the soldiers. And I remembered some of it, but I sure didn't remember all the stuff that was in it. I didn't remember I did remember the going to the yard and getting money from keeping aluminum, collecting things and little pieces of metal and that kind of thing. And I remembered some of that. And I'm Johnny just died, so I'm on CD 9, and I haven't finished it, and I don't remember what it was, but it's such a human story. It's and the poverty that they experienced was really incredible. And it's like the one family that Sissy took the baby from, and they decided to go back to the old country because what they were living in was not what they wanted to be in. And but anyway, I found it I that's why one of the reasons I recommended it, because I remembered it as being a fantastic book, and I'm glad, Stephanie, that you really liked it, and Susan, that you did too. So anyway, I liked it. Glad some of you are liking it.
I wonder how much of that, particularly that Sissy story, are things that have actually happened to her in her life, or things that are strictly her imagination. The story, actually, Sissy, I thought, was one of the more interesting characters. With the life that then all of a sudden she had a baby and changed everything around. But her story about how she was pregnant, even though she had no stomach at all, and the story that she put together and got away with it, or at least to some degree. And did something like that really happen in Betty Smith's life, or did she know somebody, or is that So some of these things are things that could happen. Some of them are they just her imagination. Those were always the kind of things I wondered when I read through the book.
I read that this book is semi-autobiographical.
That's what I had seen too. That's why I was wondering that. Yeah.
Yeah. And she also was admitted to the University of Michigan without having completed her high school diploma.
Hmm.
Oh,
She
Betty
was,
Smith was?
I think she's, I
Betty
think she was
Smith?
one of the only ones. Yeah, she here did University of Michigan.
Well,
Right,
so did
Betty Smith.
Francie. Francie got to the University of Michigan too.
Well, maybe Betty Smith was Francie.
I think that's the idea.
There's a good chance.
Yep. But it certainly seems like the life that somebody led. You know, like she wasn't writing from her head, but was writing from her person.
Yeah, that's kind of what they let you to believe, and it's just like, well, and strange things do happen.
You do, right? I thought Sissy was pretty inventive.
Yeah, that was
She was going to get she was going to get a baby, and she got a baby. You know,
it was better. It was better than her other approach of finding a way to have a baby.
Yeah.
Find as many husbands or men as you possibly can. One of them's got to give me a baby that's going to survive.
right, right.
And it was a
And
pretty
she finally
complex-
got one. Really, because she got a doctor instead of a midwife, right? So she had a baby. The baby was blue, but there was a doctor, and he said, "This baby needs oxygen." And they were able to recover the baby. I don't know why she had 10 pregnancies and all the kids died, but anyway.
Right.
She was quite a flirt, though, wasn't she, Sissy? And
Yes.
maybe her husband was too, Steve. She liked to call her husband's John. But anyway, when he finally said, "No, I'm Steve, really." And it was sort of implied that the baby came from a young woman who had an affair with a married man. And there was implication that maybe Steve was that married man. So anyway, he accepted the baby as being his own. And right, I think, didn't Sissy then have another pregnancy, and the baby was saved by the doctor?
Yeah, that was
they
the
gave
one
the baby
she had.
oxygen.
And I think maybe, I mean, she had so many pregnancies that was a little unusual, but that they didn't survive. But I thought for the one she did have, the point that author was making then was that sometimes the poor will get like substandard medical care, that nobody who had treated her or helped her with her pregnancy before had thought about oxygen when the baby came out blue. If some of those prior pregnancies were the same, so I thought she just touched on just about every aspect of poverty that she could think of, within this story. I thought Francie's mom, Katie, was that her name?
Yes.
Yeah, was a pretty complex character. And I thought her relationship with Francie was pretty complex. How Francie felt that Katie preferred her brother Neely, and I think for a lot of times she did. Number one, because he was a boy, and that might have been part of the times. And number two, he was probably a little easier and not as complex as Francie was. But it was interesting how they were so poor, and yet I think the author used Katie to show the pride. Nobody's gonna help me and give me something I haven't earned, kind of thing. When someone graduated from school or whatever, they went out for ice cream, and she gave a big tip beyond what would be expected to the waiter. And I think even Francie said, that was a lot, and she said, but you only graduate once, and it makes me feel so good to be able to do something without even thinking about it today. It seemed like, and then someone else had offered her something along the way, and she said, no, we don't take anything, we don't take charity. So yeah, I just thought it was interesting how she, through anecdotes, showed some of these things, and as she was developing the characters, there you go.
I was struck by her relationship with her father, the deep, deep love and affection she had for him, although he seemed to fail at he failed at everything he attempted except his love for Katie and the family. But she had this seemingly unflinching devotion to her father, yet her mother was working herself to the bone, working multiple jobs. And I just asked myself, did Francie ever come to realize that it was her mother that was the driving force in the family and not this ne'er-do-well, liberty digit father who let them down?
Well, I think Johnny was the more, flamboyant, sort of charismatic. Katie, you're right, was sailing the ship for them, and he could just be sort of the fun one, and I don't think that's like dreamed up. I think that happens a fair amount,
agree.
when the hardworking person who's kind of no nonsense to get the stuff done doesn't get the appreciation, because consequently her sense of fun and, oh, let's just go do this and that isn't there. But Johnny is getting this extra sort of love and attention. But I do also think he did sort of make her feel over and over again how special she was, Francie, as opposed to Katie, who was just struggling and probably didn't spend that much time thinking, about Francie, and now Francie's taking this whole thing. Yeah.
Well, I think the mom had to be the adult in the room.
Yeah.
And Katie had to give her children the foundation that they would need to face life in the future, face what was coming, because they were definitely disadvantaged with their background.
I just think though, too, and I see absolutely what you're saying there. I also think that dad, he just was so behind Francie, and he was so proud of her, and so and the mother, she was remote from her. I mean, she saved her from that rapist, and um didn't feel like she didn't love her, but when the new baby came, Francie, it was just Francie's going to stay home she's not going to go to school. She has to be home and do this. And she depended on Francie so much. And so there was still something about that character of the dad that, the crazy things he did when he took all those kids on that boat, and it was just horrific. But there was something still about him that he loved his children, and I don't know, he was someone really important to Francie.
I guess I was hoping that somewhere along the road she would acknowledge that the role that her mother was forced to play as a parent, that she would realize that she was loved. And you think of the time that this was written, and the role of women, that that Francie would realize that she was loved, but her mother had this hard road that she had to take.
Right.
Go ahead, Monica.
Oh, I was just going to say, I've only just started the book. I'm not too far into it, but I do have a sense of the dad and her a little bit. I missed last month because I couldn't attend, but I had that book read and I've got our August book read. But this book with 500 plus pages, I just didn't get finished. So, and I'm not too far into it, but I was wondering, her dad, he pressed his clothes. He had to wear the right, whatever the scarf was that you throw away. He had shiny shoes. He took care of himself always. And I think maybe even though he was drunk, he was it, in his mind. And so I wonder if that gave Francie the ability to love herself and to feel pride, because her dad felt that, and he maybe, I don't know, but he just really took care of himself very well, and then other people took care of him too, and he didn't let a lot of things bother him, and I don't know if Francie was like that, but I think being lovable, maybe she felt that she was I don't know. It's very complex. I agree that. So, but I just wonder if that gave her permission to.
He was very supportive of her, though.
Yes.
I thought it was clever when she wanted to go to that other school, that he hoped to find a house for sale and then go to the school board and say, we're about to move into this house. Can I come to this school? And so she did, even though it was 24 blocks each way from where she lived.
Mm-hmm. She was worth it.
She was worth it. Anyway, he was supportive.
I haven't got to that part yet.
Well, and he also did the thing with graduation when she didn't expect to get any flowers, and he thought before his death to put that together. What a surprise that was! So I guess I looked at him a little bit like the book. This book is about the good and the bad in Brooklyn, and he's a good example of the good and the bad. He certainly had a lot of bad in him, being drunk all the time, but down deep, he really, I mean, look how he bragged about his family. Not what he bragged about his family while he was drinking beer, but the things that he did for Francie. Admittedly, was there's an awful lot of bad in him, but then there was some deep down inside. There was some good in him. It a little bit like what the story is. It's lots of the good and the bad.
Well, to a child, their self-esteem depends on the love and admiration of a parent, and he certainly gave it as described. I read the book so long ago, and I watched the movie instead of rereading it because I couldn't find it quickly. And the movie is available on, I can't remember if it was YouTube or what. I just searched for it, and it came up pretty easily. So for those who want to see it, it's quickly available through your TV.
How much of the book do you think the movie? Someone said they didn't think the movie covered the whole book; that it took a portion of the book. How much of the book?
That I don't know, because I read it so long ago that I can't really say. But it captured a lot. For example, the incident about the Christmas tree. That is exactly portrayed. The salesperson of the Christmas tree says just those lines. You see the kids waiting, the two of them trying to be able to catch the tree. It's that one is completely as currently described the way it was in the book. I think that authors have to make a choice whether they want to write things as a memoir or they want the greater freedom of writing it as a novel. One of our Ann Arbor people, Barbara Stark Neiman, I know her first book. She wrote about her great aunt during the Second World War, and she decided to write it as a novel, but she could have written it as a memoir also. And one gets the feeling that Betty Smith made that choice also. Before I go further, one thing I wondered is I don't know if she wrote anything else, any other novels. I just
Betty Smith.
don't remember. With all the
she wrote 3 or 4 more novels.
She did.
Yes. Mm-hmm. She spent time doing as a playwright, but she did write another 3 or 4 novels, or 4 or 5. Anyway.
And she wrote A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, Tomorrow Will Be Better, Maggie Now, and Joy in the Morning.
Joy in the Morning is a movie.
Yeah, like in the 60s or 70s.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
With I can.
And that's another very touching story.
Right, and I just remember one of the reasons I was so interested in it, and I read it so very long ago, was because I was born in New York City, and so Brooklyn had a special aura, but it was true all over the city. There was great poverty, but people. Well, I remember my grandparents, they lived in one of these railroad apartments where there was a front room, and then there was the kitchen, and then there was the tiny bedroom, and everybody had to squeeze into that. And there was a tub in the kitchen because there was no bathroom. And so people had to go to the bathroom, joint bathroom on another floor, and but to take a bath, everybody had their own bathroom so it couldn't be private. And there was a sense everybody was lacking money at that time. There were a lot of immigrants and so forth. But there was a sense of not desperation, but kind of the way the mother did. She just tried to adjust to the circumstances. But I think the reason this book is so loved because the characters are so well described. They're so human, and you feel their human feelings. She does a wonderful job as a writer with that. That's why I'm surprised. I never heard of her other books, and whether they're similar or this one is so intense because it's based on her life.
I kind of thought it was interesting how her mother somehow there was this mutual sort of attraction between her and, was he a policeman?
Yeah, he was a policeman.
Yeah. And, he was, also instantly with her. And it took a long time, actually. And, eventually that came together. And that was kind of interesting, too.
That is a major part of the movie. And also the other thing about the movie is towards the end, the mother comes across as more of a sympathetic character. And Francie kind of understands her more.
Oh, good.
Yeah, mother was the one that emphasized education, giving them Shakespeare and the Bible to read some of every day. And, she got that from her mother, emphasized the education as the way to, maybe get out of this poverty. And I don't know, I guess I felt that Francie appreciated that aspect some. But that was, I guess, part of the hopeful process in this book, that they could escape this poverty with education. I had never read this book before, and I was sort of surprised it had never come up on my radar, after reading it and sort of realizing that it's an important, I think a very important book for that time period. And interestingly, I think the very next book I actually read, listened to it on audio, mentioned this book. It was The Librarian of Burned Books or banned books, I mean, and this book was referenced in there because it was so popular with the servicemen in World War II. So that was interesting to me that how popular that book was.
So this was an instant bestseller, and I mean, it's also a difficult time to write something like this, right in the middle of World War II. Was this an instant bestseller? I guess I don't know.
Yeah, it was.
Was it?
So I was one of the people suggesting the book. I had never read it, but I believe that growing up, my parents were not readers, but they did have a couple of books, and I think this might have been one of the books that they had on the shelf in the living room. So anyway, I also thought it was well worth reading. But I asked myself, why did I like it so much? And I guess you're all saying what you liked about the book. So Francie actually is my parents' age. My father was born, so she was alleged to be born December 15th, 1901. My father was born a few weeks before that, my mother a couple of months after that. And so there's a certain identity. Now, Betty Smith herself was born 5 years to the day before Francie. So to that extent, there's some fiction. But anyway, some of the things I identified with, I remember walking home from school, always looking in the gutter to see what you could find. And cigarette packs, gum wrappers, you could peel off the tin foil. And
we had to save that tin foil during the war. I remember doing that. And we thought as kids that we were doing things that made us feel important and as if we were participating in the war effort and peeling off those aluminum things, and we would make them into little balls. And just, the ball got bigger and bigger as you put more aluminum on it, and then you contributed to where they were collecting medals.
That's interesting, the history you have with that, Richard, that you've looked up Betty Smith and you've looked and compared the birth times and everything like that. And did they live in New York? Did you live in New York?
My family? No, they lived in California.
Yeah.
So I have the book from the Dexter Library, and it's due in 2 days. Actually, they had to get it from a different library. They actually didn't have it at Dexter, but it's in the kind of more local one. It might be from Ipsy. And so I'm gonna have to find a DVD player. We have one somewhere and hook it up.
Or just try it on your TV. I don't know if you can get YouTube or whatever.
That's interesting. It's 123 minutes, so I thought that was quite long. And it was really, really, it was nominated for awards, and the man who played her father won the best actor in a supporting role. And
He
so
was excellent.
I really think it'll be fun to watch. And always things are a little bit different and everything, but you have in your mind's eye what people looked like, and now, we'll see what, the director thought, but I'll be taking it back in at least in the next 2 days because it's coming due.
And I thought when I watched the movie just a few weeks ago that instantaneously I had the feeling of the times, because they show one of the first shots is of a baby carriage with a hood, and it was sort of made out of rattan. And I just had a flashback to that was sort of what baby carriages and strollers often look like. So they made obviously an effort to try and make the sets and everything look like the time. It's really an excellent movie.
Oh. Well, and I thought it was an excellent book. I admire her writing and her writing style. I think the thing that kept resonating with me was the fact that she was finding the extraordinary in the ordinary, and that she was able to put that on paper. And I thought it was just amazing.
What was extraordinary, Sharon?
Well, she was making the things that she was Betty Smith, as she's writing, she's making their everyday common happenings really extraordinary in her portrayal of them. Do you remember the part about the tin can nailed to the closet floor?
Yes.
I mean, that to me symbolized so much of their situation. They were always taking money out, putting money in, and symbolic of poverty and surviving poverty.
Yes. And it was interesting when we talked back before about their being able to read, and the fact that the grandmother couldn't read, and that had changed her life so much. And then when Johnny died, and she had to read both the children read the policy that they had, and they emphasized the fact that the children could read, and emphasized it in a way of making it very important. And the other thing was, this cost a penny, this cost 2 pennies, this cost 13 pennies. This, emphasizing the poverty and what a penny meant to them was so significant.
That resonated. Me. I remember when I was very little, going with my mother up and down the shopping street, and she would stop at every store and ask for the price of the bananas and the oranges and everything. And then she would retrace her steps and go to the store where it was a penny less a pound for that, and go to another store where it was a penny less. And that's sort of what life was like for a lot of people at that time.
I
The
thought,
movie theater was. Go ahead.
I'm not sure who. I was just going to say, I thought that Francie, that whole interaction with that teacher, I kind of mentioned it in my first part, but the way that teacher wanted Francie to write sort of a rosy version of whatever her assignment was. And in her writing, Francie wanted to speak the truth. And did she like wad up her theme or whatever and say, I'm never going to write again? And I can't remember how that all came out, but
I think she threw it. Then she threw them she burned them all, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, something really dramatic. And I just think her righteous, her pride, her intelligence, her ability to speak truth to power. I mean, she was such a strong little girl, and I guess she was getting bigger by then. But I thought that was a powerful section too of or part of the story. And just tangential to that, it kind of reminded me a little bit, if any of you have read Angela's Ashes. That was a story of so much poverty in Ireland, and that was a really good book. And that the boy that was sort of the narrator of that, of course, came to the United States and everything. But anyway,
The story with the teacher kind of hit me also. Is that something that really happened to her as a schoolgirl in real life? Betty Smith in her life, that did happen. So is this book saying, look, I'm not just going to write about the good things. I'm going to tell you how life is. Well, that's what this book is. So is this book a result of maybe her having to suffer through a teacher like that?
Well, this has all stimulated me to want to look at her other books, which as I said, I never knew that she even wrote other books.
I'm just telling everybody I know about it. Say, try it, give it a try. It's just an interesting story. If you just want to immerse yourself in something that just, these characters and everything, just get away from some of the other stuff that's going on. And it was a nice, I didn't go last month, but, the one before the Anne Applebaum book, that was just short but heavy duty. And this was heavy duty in a different way, but it was just intense, but, wonderful story.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear Al and Richard jump in with these interesting comments, because I was thinking, would a man appreciate this story? Would a man appreciate this writing because it's so female focused?
That did cross my mind. That this book does not make men look very good. It makes it sound like they're all drunk. They all spend all their time at the bar, and then this is in the midst of World War II, where they're all off at war. I'll let Richard answer too. I really did enjoy the book. I've driven through Brooklyn, and as you drive through there, you think of, how do people live here? I mean, drive through Brooklyn today, even, and that's been 10, 15 years ago since I drove through there, but drive through some of the back streets of Brooklyn, and it's like there's people that live still in this real poverty, and just reading this story about what it is really like there kind of is something to I always wonder what would it be like to grow up in New York City. There's certainly good parts and there are bad parts, but if you're growing up in Manhattan, it's a little different story than growing up in Brooklyn or Queens or something like that.
Not really, because my grandparents and I lived in Manhattan, but they lived down on the Lower East Side, and it was really, really poor.
Well, yeah, certainly not all of Manhattan's rich. That's true. Sorry, Richard, go ahead. Yeah. I'd like to hear your answer too.
Well, I was thinking about, so Monica, the Lower East Side of Manhattan, that was bad. And when you got a little more money, then you moved up into Brooklyn to Williamsburg. So that was, so my feeling about this is that Francie Nolan was an extraordinary girl, wasn't she? Her grandmother was the one who set the pace by saying she'd read a page of Shakespeare every night and a page of, it was the Protestant Bible, she said, even though they were Catholic, Protestant Bible. I think this meant the King James Version, which was, as you know, was translated by committee and was translated such that it could be best read to the congregation. So anyway, it was very poetic. and it would be a good thing to be reading. Of course, the Bible they used was a Gideon Bible taken from some hotel room, I guess. But Francie was pretty extraordinary. She was reading a book a day. She'd go to the library, check out books, read a book a day. And then she was able to get that job finding news items in newspapers. She got the job when she was 14, pretending she was 16. And then after that, as you know, when then the young baby Lori was born, the mother couldn't work so hard, so she had to have Francie go to work just to help with the finances. And after the first year, and baby was a little older, and I guess her sister was helping out too, she said, okay, you can go to high school. And Francie said, I would be bored. Of course, she would be 2 years older than everybody else. I'd be bored in high school. I want to go to college. And I guess she came here to the university. I was sort of wondering, why did she come to the University of Michigan? Well, she wanted to go to Columbia. But her boyfriend, Ben Blake, said the University of Michigan was a liberal school and relatively inexpensive. So she came to Ann Arbor to go to school. I'm not sure she graduated. Anyway, the book ends there, doesn't it? So we don't know. Anyway, you'd like to have your own daughter and grandchildren. Well, one's own daughter and grandchildren do end up being fairly clever in spite of their inheritance, maybe. So anyway, I didn't think of it as being male or female. Certainly it is a book about coming of age as a girl, coming of age and living in poverty as she did. But I can appreciate that as a man. Well, I mean, we have daughters and granddaughters, and we're just as proud of them as we are of grandsons and grandsons.
My good friend is a high school English teacher here in Key West. And so she gets to set the book list for her students every year. So when I see her next, I'm going to ask her if she has any thoughts about this book. I imagine the same question for young boys today. Would you be able to get a young man, a high school age boy, to read this book and to relate to the story?
And then there's who said it, that it was very popular among the soldiers?
Yeah.
Yes. I think many of the soldiers came from poverty.
Yeah.
One of the things they said in the book about, when books went to war, was the fact that they believed that the fact that they had all the books that they did and were able to read when there was time available, that it made them more ready for college, because these were probably kids that would not have read. They hadn't had the access to these books, and they felt that they were probably more ready to go to college and get onto the GI Bill by having had all of these books. It was interesting. Yes.
That is a good book. And I did read it, When Books Went to War, Pat, because I know you put it on the list, and I thought I have to read this, and I was impressed.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little more about that? How did the books?
It's called When Books Went to War, and at the end of it, it tells all the books that they published, with us in a small format for the soldiers, and that before D-Day, they had many boxes sitting there waiting so that they would have sufficient books for them. It's interesting. I have never heard anybody that was a soldier or anybody speak about the fact that they did have books. But we have a friend who is a Norman Rockwell collector. And he had a little box that had 36 Saturday evening posts in it that were this size that would fit into a pocket. And whatever, I don't know what font they used for printing them, but you could read it easily. The whole page of the post was in that little, pages and pages and pages. And a whole Saturday evening post was in something that was about that thick and about that size. It was amazing. Now, the jokes were not in there. In the packet, they had a special volume that was the jokes. But it made me a believer that there were, in fact, these books published. But I've never seen them anywhere. I've never heard anybody talk about them. And when I saw this, I was like, I became a believer. If it had been AI, I wouldn't have believed it at all, but anyway. I was really excited, and he brought the box over and let us keep it for a couple of weeks and stuff like that, and so I could read the Saturday Evening Post. But it's interesting to me that the only time I ever heard about all this is when I read, and I haven't done any further research on it, but I probably ought to verify that in fact that was the case. But that certainly, I have no reason to doubt it, except the fact that Don's uncle was in the war and he never mentioned it, and I never heard anybody else who mentioned it.
But didn't the woman who wrote the book say that they were destroyed?
No, I don't remember that.
I think that they were, and I think that at the end there was concerns that the books might be expressing a certain value. Do you remember that? That they didn't want to promote. Yeah, at the end, because this was kind of a scholarly project of this woman who became passionate about these books, and that was her whole research. I don't know if it was for her doctorate or what, but
I didn't remember any of that.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll have to go back and read the book.
Yeah, because that was so fascinating to me that, kind of like now, like it's, we can't put right wing or that's left wing, idea, whatever. And so I don't know. I thought, oh boy, it happened back then too. But yeah, but I'm wondering why they aren't in the Smithsonian at least or something. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
so I hear you, but
maybe I'll call the Smithsonian and ask them.
Good idea.
Because that woman did all that research, so it was quite believable.
Was it a copyright problem?
I don't have any idea.
I don't know if it was that.
Right.
But it was such a great thing for these soldiers that were so bored.
Yes.
Pull that out, and
because they're not fighting all the time, and obviously they had this. It's kept them busy. It was. Do you remember the part about their feeling that it helped them to be ready for college?
Yes. Yeah. It's fantastic.
Right.
And this book just was one that stood out and that she talked about.
Right. It was.
Sally, did you want to jump in?
I was just going to say, when Stephanie mentioned Angela's Ashes, this book, that was, I think I stayed awake for 3 days straight reading that. I just couldn't put it down. And this is not quite like that, but it's very much, you want to know what happens to these characters because right away you care about them. And so for me, it was a great read. This was my second time reading it. And it just, even though it is a long book, it really went right along. And it's just, to me, it's such a story of perseverance, and kind of, having Johnny, the dreamer, on one pole, and Francie's kind of a dreamer too, but Katie's very practical. She holds the ship together, and kind of seeing those two sides of it, and then really what Francie takes from both of them. Um, and as she moves forward in her life, she is practical. She goes to work, she earns money when that's needed, but she never really gives up her dream of being a writer. And that bad teacher who was telling her to, write the happy clap, trap, whatever, um, she just, she just completely dismissed it. And she said, I'm going to do what I want to do. And, so yeah, I loved it. I was somebody mentioned that she read a book a day, Richard, I think, and how she loved going to the library, and the librarian had this brown dish on her desk that always had a flower in it. And as she's getting ready to leave, she goes back to the library, and she asks the librarian a question. The librarian still doesn't look up, and then eventually she does. It's interesting that, you know all there was a lot of negativity, but Francie really never let it get her down. And so it's a great story of coming of age and persevering, and really, making a good life out of some really difficult circumstances. So yeah, it's very inspiring.
Jean, did you want to jump in and add anything to our conversation?
You're mute. You're mute, Jean.
There we go. I read this book when I was a teenager, and it was very, very inspiring for me. I grew up in a working class family that didn't read and didn't have books. And an aunt of my mother gave us this book. And I read this book and was totally inspired by it. And I saw that it came out as a paperback edition recently, because they're celebrating the book having been written so many years ago. And I said, I want to reread the book. And so I bought the book, and it's sitting right here, but I haven't reread it yet. I've been busy with some other things, but it was an inspirational book for me. It was one of the very few books that we ever had in our house. And so I was so happy to have read it. And it inspired me, this book, when I was a teenager, to push forward and do many of the things that I have done in my life.
Wow.
It was an inspirational book for me.
Did other people in your family read it?
Yes, my other sisters read it.
Do you think it had the same effect on them as it had on you? Did it affect you all?
I don't know. I have a twin. Some of you know that, some of you don't. But she read it, and I talked with her about it recently because of the fact that I repurchased the book and want to read it. And she said yes, that she found it very inspiring.
Yeah.
And was glad that we had gotten it. And we were trying to remember the name of the aunt who gave it to us. From her, it was a book that she had in her house. My mother's aunt, not my mother's sister, but my mother's aunt, who my mother had lived with when she went to high school, because my mother grew up on a farm and didn't go to high school. My dad never went to high school, but my mother did, because she had this aunt who lived in the city. And so she could stay with this aunt and go to high school while she was in high school. And then she would go home, during the summer and in the weekends and work on the farm. So it was a very inspiring book for me at that time. And so I want to reread it. And especially hearing this conversation makes me really want to reread it.
Right.
I accidentally saw that you guys were going to be discussing this book. And so I said, I got to do it. Even though I had my book group. I am in a book group that meets on in the morning on the fourth Wednesday of the month. So I don't. It keeps me busy on Wednesdays, but I wanted to for sure hear this discussion. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Welcome, Jean. Delighted you're
It's
here.
great
and
to
thank
see
you
you.
for sharing that.
So I was also listening to the book, reading of the book, as well as reading. I would sort of switch back and forth. They're both equally enjoyable. The reader had a Brooklyn accent. You remember Francie says when she is going off to college, she never wants to lose her Brooklyn roots. She will not try to change her accent. So that she carries with her. So Monica, do you have a Manhattan accent that you never want to lose?
Well, my children say so. Of course, we have differences. We tease each other. They say orange and I say orange. So
Do you say dungarees or blue jeans?
dungarees.
Marjorie, did you want to jump in with any comments?
I'm afraid I didn't get it read. So otherwise I would say something, of course, but I didn't get it read.
No.
I read it a long time ago and I have no memory, so that's okay. I'm enjoying the conversation.
I will say also, when I got this book from the Fenton Library, they went, "Oh my gosh, everybody's requesting this book, right?" So I actually had to wait. So I've got 100 pages more to go. So I haven't read the end of it because it took me a while to get it. So it's for some reason they said, "Wow, lots of people are requesting this book right now." So interesting that a book that was written quite a few years ago.
Well, I wonder if I think Jean had mentioned it's a certain anniversary. Is it like 100th anniversary, or does that make book clubs want to read it more?
It was published in 1943, so
It's the 75th anniversary.
Maybe that's the reason.
And this the book here says right on the front, the 75th anniversary edition. This is from Amazon.
Okay.
From several years ago.
Jean, it doesn't look like there's a tree on that next to that apartment building. Is there? Yes, there is.
Oh yeah, right in front of it.
Can you see the back?
See the tree?
The back, a picture of the building too?
Yes.
Very cool.
Yeah.
The picture on the front of my book, this is going to glow too much, shows the Brooklyn Bridge, which I think is the area that she grew up in. But Cindy and I have actually walked down that street. So that was really coincidental that one of the times when we were in New York, we walked over to Brooklyn and walked around a while. And that we both remember going down that street.
Oh, that's fun.
I had an experience on the Brooklyn Bridge recently. Not recently, but some years ago. A friend was having a birthday party in the footing of the Brooklyn Bridge, if you can imagine this. And the footings are kind of below the water, and they're actually spaces down there. And so we were driving down that East Side Drive, past near the Brooklyn Bridge to get to where we were supposed to go to get there, to this footings place. And the traffic was totally stopped. And we were very upset, thinking we're going to be so late to this thing because the traffic wasn't moving. Well, when I got to the party, Al Gore was the sitting vice president and he was at the party. So then I figured probably that's why the traffic was slowed, because they had to have security since he was the sitting vice president. Now, can you imagine the nightmare of having to do security for the Brooklyn Bridge?
Oh my goodness.
All right. Mary, do you have a comment?
Oh, I was just going to add that I'm surprised nobody's mentioned the quirky aunt that called each of her husbands. It was John, was it?
John.
Steve. Until the one finally objected in the end. That was.
Wasn't that
just-
Sissy or was that someone else? Or I can't remember.
Yeah,
which.
it was.
Yeah, because we started talking about Sissy, but we didn't mention that comment. Yeah. I mean, that aspect of her. Yeah.
It's just wonderful, the power of the writing that has everybody so entranced with the characters. I mean, you could describe the characters in so many different ways, but she did it in a way that everybody feels empathy for them, some connection somehow, inspiration from them. It's quite remarkable.
It is.
It is.
Really something.
I guess we have Richard and maybe Pat to thank for recommending this wonderful read to us.
There were 4 people that might have.
Were there? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't remember who
Good
else.
on you all.
Were you one of them, Stephanie?
I wasn't one of that. Anyway.
Well, thank you, everybody, for recommending.
Oh my gosh, so good. I have a question for Al back to Bletchley. Did you ask your wife to read the Rose Code?
I did. She hasn't done. She wants to read it, but she has not. She has not read it yet. So yeah, but I mean, even though she hadn't read the book, she was as inspired as I was with going. Probably she'd heard enough from me that it's almost like she read it. But I mean, she was engaged in going through some of the museums and reading some of the background of how this or that happened. No, she thoroughly enjoyed it and was not ready to leave. The only reason we left because they were getting ready to close.
I was thinking, kind of inspired to see Brooklyn. I've never been to Brooklyn, and I do hear like there's a lot of gentrification there. I think
there is.
You know, so it's probably I mean, very fancy in areas that weren't, of course, and you wouldn't want to see tenements and everything, but it's big, right? It's a pretty big borough.
It's a very big borough, and it borders. There are beaches there that are very, very famous, and now it is very gentrified. There are still pockets. There are always pockets of that's the way New York is. There are pockets, and you can live in a 20-block area and never leave, but there's everything in there for you. Their local library, the local school, the local stores, etc. But Brooklyn has become very gentrified. It's very expensive in certain areas. If you want to see tenements in Manhattan, there is a tenement museum.
That's very good. It's a good museum.
But I was going to say the same thing. If you haven't walked across the Brooklyn Bridge, there is Cindy and I have done it. And when we go to New York, it's one of the things we say, let's just walk across the bridge. The people, I don't know, just people watching is great on the Brooklyn Bridge. And there is also a restaurant that's rather expensive, but maybe the best or one of the best restaurants that we've eaten in New York City, just called the River Cafe.
Yes.
Somebody else.
Yep.
Oh, you know that, Monica?
Yes.
Their dessert that they'll make you is a chocolate Brooklyn Bridge. So it's a very interesting place to go. Fantastic view of the Statue of Liberty and stuff. So, well, I'm glad to hear somebody else has been there.
Awesome.
So I guess we'll leave A Tree Grows in Brooklyn and move on to An Elephant in My Kitchen. That's our next book. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's it. Yeah.
Thanks.
So
I have one thing before we stop.
Okay.
I watched something called The Pieces I Am, and it's a documentary about Toni Morrison, the author of the book that we read not too long ago. I'm trying to think of what the name of the book was.
Song of Solomon.
Yeah, Song of Solomon. Anyway, it was an interview with Toni Morrison, The Pieces I Am, and it was really excellent. So just thought I would recommend it.
That's a YouTube video, isn't it? Or it's on the YouTube channel?
It's either YouTube or else it's Netflix, but
Yeah,
it might
easy to
be
get.
on YouTube, right?
It came out in the theaters. I saw it at the Michigan years ago.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
it's a movie like that. I don't know if that makes a difference.
right.
Well, I know I started watching it on Netflix and I got interrupted, but yeah, it was a very interesting commentary on how she writes and what she writes about.
Yes, very interesting.
Is she the one who wrote Jazz? Like,
Beloved,
Yeah, I think-
didn't she
I think
write
it was-
Beloved
Beloved? Yes.
and Song of Solomon?
I think Jazz was maybe her last book.
The Bluest Eye.
that book is amazing because it's really, as I was reading it, it gives you the sense of you're reading jazz. Because at the beginning, the first chapter, it tells you the whole story. But then it continues, and it's like when you listen to jazz, they play the theme as it's supposed to be, and then they make all these different improvisations and changes. And that book, as I was reading it, I just had this sense that that's what she was doing. And then I read some review that somebody else wrote about that they felt the same way. But I thought, my God, what a unusually brilliant thing to do.
Yeah. Jazz by Toni Morrison, 1992.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she got the Nobel Prize, didn't she, for her whole body of work?
Yeah.
So thank goodness she was appreciated for many aspects. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Any last comments from anyone? Don't
Great
be shy.
session.
I just want to observe that absolutely everybody seemed to really like this book. And usually there's people that go, well, I might be the only one, but I don't like it or whatever. But everybody seemed positive about this book.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very nice. Good.
A good read.
Yeah.
A good read.
Good comment.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Good to hear everybody.
Yep. Take
Yes.
care.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed this latest episode by the University of Michigan Retirees Association. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to learn more about us, visit us on the web at umra.hr.umich.edu and subscribe to this podcast. Thank you again. See you next time, and always, go blue.